Welcome in, everybody, to another great episode of the TBT podcast. With me, as always, one of the best in the podcast world, talking about your Kansas City Chiefs. Zach, how you doing, man?
I'm the greatest Chiefs fan.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting
Simple.
really freaking close to Kansas City Chiefs football.
Extremely. Yeah,
it is.
But it's still the longest 2 weeks of the year, easily, even if we're so close.
Yeah,
I guess it's only about a week.
We officially have a roster, a day one roster. So I don't know. The off season in the summer always feels long, but I feel like after July 4th, it's just like, bam! It's like all of a sudden, it's right in your face, and it's like, all right, it is football time. Putting away the baseball bats, putting away the NBA stuff. I am ready to go.
We keeping Bobby Witt's baseball bat.
The Royals are good this year, so we got to glare at it. We got to have like one eye.
We're about to sweep the Guardians, take first place.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, the Royals, it's weird because I will be watching baseball and rooting for my actual team late in September. And I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, it's
usually I'm just like, okay, we're out of it. I don't even want to watch them because they're going to make me more angry. So I'm just going to focus on a team that's going to win. But now I'm like, oh, wait, there's something to root for now. So, yeah, somewhat we got to keep our eye on baseball. But the main thing we're going to keep our eye on today is we have some cuts. We finally have, I think, something every Chiefs fan has been talking about, like the wide receiver room is finally formed. And it'll be interesting to keep on the practice squad. What did you think about these wave of cuts and how the 53 is lining up?
I mean, as we went over in the last pod, we talked about the chances that Kadarius Toney would be cut, and I was saying that if I was in charge, I wouldn't do it. Just there's just something about that guy. But he's gone. He's officially not a part of Chiefs Kingdom. Now he will forever be in our hearts because of that punt return. But he's not on the squad. Sky Moore made it, which I'm hoping that means good things for him. Like if he were to get, I mean, with Hollywood Brown out, he could be playing a little bit these first couple weeks. And so hopefully he's able to contribute. Justin Watson made it, which is great. I'm glad that happened. Let's talk about Justin Ross getting cut because that was one of your guys that you thought would for sure make it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When it came out today, they let him go. I think you need a receiver on the team that's a little bit different than everyone else. I know he's not a big separation guy. I know he doesn't get a ton of separation, but I think he's a guy that, again, you can use him in the red zone. And he's also a fast receiver, too. Obviously, he doesn't have the type of separation as most guys do, but 6'4".
He's not that. He's not fast. He might look fast because he got these long strides, but I feel like that's
he's not. He's not one of these Legion of Boom guys like we have on our team. That's why I say he's a little bit different than guys we have on the actual roster. That's what I'd like to see him. But if you're keeping a guy to be your 6th, 7th receiver, sometimes your 5th receiver, you got to play special teams. So do I get it? Do I get why they let him go? Yes. But did I want to see a guy like him on the roster? Because just some of the catches in preseason, I'm just like, oh my God. Like, can you imagine Mahomes just having a guy where he's just rolling out and it's just like, F it, I'm just going to lob it up in the air and you just come down with it. Most guys are speedster guys. There is another receiver we brought back who I think can do a little bit of that. We're going to get to him. But yeah, you're right. He was one of my guys that I did really want to see make this roster. But I just don't know who they replace with because Watson, he's played special teams. Hardman is a special teams guy. He's listed as the starting kick returner or punt returner, excuse me. And then, Watson's going to play that. Sky Moore's even played at times. And then you have Worthy, who's listed as the kick returner. So, again, it sucks. But I think if they try to bring him on the practice squad, somebody else is going to pick him up.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, like, Ross might be the perfect receiver for, like, within the 5-yard line, play action sets where we go heavy. We might have 2 tight ends in and we have 2 receivers. And he's perfect for that. But the offense that we run everywhere else, he does not really have a role. And so I understand the cut, even though, ever since we picked him up after that draft in 2022, I've been hyped ever since then. But makes sense. Do you want to move on to Mecole Hardman?
Say it again.
Do you want to move on to Mecole?
Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman. What is your thoughts on bringing back Mecole Hardman? He's been on this team 6 years now, 2019, or 5 years, 6 years.
This will be 6.
Yeah, this will be 6. So is he the longest? I'm pretty sure he'd be the longest term receiver outside of Kelce at 10. So
yeah, definitely.
And on the roster, he's got to be top 3 or top 4. Winchester, Travis Kelce, and then
Chris
Patrick
Jones
Mahomes and him. Or Jones and then him. So yeah, he's top 5 on guys that have been on the Chiefs the longest. So and that is kind of crazy that, again, he's been on this team. Because remember, he was the Tyreek Hill quote-unquote replacement, because we didn't know if Tyreek Hill was going to get suspended way back in 2019 because of, some of the issues with his son and his ex-girlfriend. So we remember Chiefs Kingdom got him because we were like, all right, well, he'll be the Tyreek replacement for a couple weeks or maybe the season. So it was, again, I don't know. There's times where I'm just like, oh, okay, Mecole Hardman. Yeah, you make a little jet sweep here and you make a play here, but excuse me, if he was the guy, I think, to Ross, between him and Ross, I would still rather have Ross, but I get why they would go with a guy like Mecole Hardman just because of his special teams.
I would rather have Hardman. I mean, we saw in the Super Bowl that he is kind of like he still has that ability to stretch the field, even if he's not really a good route runner or good catcher at the catch point. But him knowing our offense, he's proven he's a great gadget guy. Like in that 2020 playoff run before we got eliminated, he was going crazy against the Buffalo Bills. He had like a 60-yard carry. Like he still had, and before he fumbled at the goal line against the Bills this year, I mean, he can make plays that Justin Ross couldn't. And I feel like he just matches the archetype that we have for receivers a lot better. So I'm glad we kept him over Ross. Not so sure about Sky Moore, but we'll see about that.
Yeah, again, Sky Moore, I don't know if he's a guy that it's still left unseen and we're like, okay, maybe there's something still out there, but I just don't really know what he's good at. Like, he's not like, it's like, okay, maybe he's a good slot receiver. Maybe he's a good X and he's an over-the-top guy, or maybe he's just a speedster. It's like, I don't really know what he's good at. Like, he has the body of like a really just good slot receiver, just a guy like an Edelman type guy. You're like, okay, 3rd and like 4, he's just gonna get open. Like, he's just.
But he doesn't understand that. He sees a route like in Madden where it has a line, and you're gonna run on that line whether you like it or not. There's no, doing anything outside of the structure of that play.
Right.
And so now, but I am hoping to see improvement in the snaps he gets this year. So I don't want to say too much.
Yeah, you can't really be that type of guy. I mean, that's, it's almost like taking Magic Johnson and taking him and being in a structured, slow offense. Like, you're not going to take guys like that with Mahomes, and Mahomes is like, and how many times have we seen on the field Mahomes telling him after, a miscommunication, being like, you should have went in more, you should have cut here, him pointing at wherever. And it's like, I've seen that multiple times with Sky Moore, because I do think he's the type of guy like, oh, you're telling me to run a go route, I am going to run a go route. The guy's on his left side in the go route, he can clearly just edge over to the right a little bit. And he's like, no, I run straight. So I think that's maybe the thing with Sky Moore, is I don't know if he really has this like backyard football. Like, Mahomes is like, no, move over here now. That route is dead. Move over here. I think most guys on this roster are going to be able to do that. But that's my only thing with Sky Moore, is I would like to see him. I know he did good on special teams. I know you pointed that out last time. He had a couple good special teams plays. But I would like to see him just be like a slot guy this year. Just get I like those little quick passes here and there and get open.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, because I feel like we didn't have the expectation of him to be this outside guy when we drafted, because we didn't have Rice at the time. Okay. So we drafted him as kind of like similar to Juju, except for a little more shifty than Juju is. and he just hasn't shown that he has that ability either. So,
right, yeah. Moving on to another receiver is a guy you just mentioned. Is Juju Smith-Schuster is back in the kingdom. How do you feel, Zach?
I like the move because with these late roster of getting cut, there is no the floor is low and the ceiling is low with all of those guys. Okay, but with Juju, the ceiling could be high. He looks kind of cooked. Okay, he looks cooked last year. He had like 100 yards maybe all season, but just less than 2 years ago, he was going crazy on the final drive of the Super Bowl. Okay, so if this is an injury that can progress and get better, where it's not just this is just his final form, this is how he is for the rest of his career. We just stole a wide receiver 3, and he's going to be our wide receiver 6, and he's a perfect replacement for Rice if Rice were to go out, and he already has great chemistry with Mahomes, putting up almost 1,000 yards in a season. So I love it.
Yeah, I like it too because my thing is this: is he was our wide receiver number 1, and I don't. And this is not saying he was this much of a drop off last year. I look at it as he basically was on the Chiefs roster last year, but he was just on IR. Because that's basically what I'm hoping it is. Because it's literally like you said, it's like he went from just basically, or could have been 1,000-yard receiver if he didn't sit out, a game. But he's going from having a great year with the Chiefs, going to the Patriots and playing like 5 or 6 games, or if that, and having, like you said, I think less than 100 yards. And then now he's just right back on the Chiefs. So my thing is this: they don't need Juju to go and have 900 yards again. They don't. They need him to literally, what's the word? Well, the thing we couldn't do last year, catch the ball. Like, I don't think it's just me watching some of the games from last year today and just realizing, like, we literally, our receivers legitimately could not catch a single pass. We're getting our number 1 receiver from the year before where Patrick Mahomes had 500 or 5,000 plus yards and 47 touchdowns. And now that guy's coming back and he's our 4th receiver, 5th receiver right now on the depth chart. So that's huge. So I'm excited for it. Again, we don't need Juju to be like this 800, 900-yard guy. It's like we need you to just go do your job. When it's time to catch the ball, go catch the ball.
When it's time to be on the field, it might not happen at all. It might not happen. It might never be his time, but we know that he is more likely to come through with his job than the other guys that were maybe getting cut. So,
yeah, absolutely. So I like the move. I think a lot of people are just like, oh, why do we go back to Juju? Well, again, he's a perfect, like you said, a Rice fill-in because they do have that similar type of game. So I like the move. But right now, the way the wide receiver room has shaped up, I like a lot. Then Watson filled out that last spot. We talked about Watson. I like it. Worthy, Rice, of course, Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, the difference between last year and this year, they also went to go get a tight end. How do you feel about the Chiefs going to go get a tight end and bringing on 4 tight ends? We did not expect. I don't think either.
We completely miscalculated how the roster breakdown was.
Yes.
In the last, we said 3 tight ends because that's how we've done it.
Yep.
We said 9 linemen because we wanted more people on defense, more depth on defense, and they actually went with more players on offense, 26 to 24 on defense, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's actually the way I think of it is that means that the O linemen that we drafted that could have gotten cut are showing promise. Because we don't want to let them hit the practice squad because someone can snatch up CJ Hansen from Holy Cross. That's the guy whose name I didn't know last week.
Right.
From Holy Cross because he's a good player. And so the fact that we're kind of sacrificing depth on defense that we will get back later in the year with Omenihu coming back for the promise of these guys that we drafted, I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, we were correct on the first 3. I am pretty sure we had 2 quarterbacks. We had 3 running backs, and I think we had the same running backs: Pacheco, Clyde, and Carson Steele. I know Carson Steele is technically listed at fullback, but he'll probably end up at some point probably taking the running back 2 position. And then wide receivers, we have the 7 wide receivers: Rice, Worthy, Hollywood, Juju Smith, Justin Watson, Sky Moore, and McCole Hardman. Then the tight ends, we have 4 tight ends: Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, Peyton Hendershot. If I'm saying his name right.
That's a fire name.
Yeah, that is a cool name.
I mean, you think he's gonna say Henderson? Nah, Hendershot. You're good.
Yeah, Hendershot.
Dead.
And then Jared Wiley. That one is, like you said, I was surprised that they went out and got a 4th tight end. The offensive line, I'm pretty sure we predicted 10.
I think I predicted 9, and they came up with 10. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So they kept pretty much the guys we thought were gonna be here. Pretty much the same guys gonna be here. But the starters, you have Kingsley Suamatea. Still don't know if I'm saying his name right. I hope I am. Good. If you ever listen to Suamatea, I'm just gonna keep calling you Kingsley or the King. But I hope I'm saying your name right. Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Jawaan Taylor are your starters. Are you pleased with that?
The starters or the whole unit?
No, the whole. Just the starters, but yeah, we could go the whole.
Oh, the starters! I'm ecstatic about that. As long as Thuney comes back to pre-pectoral tear, which sounds like a terrible injury, I couldn't imagine not being able to even push on this mic or this camera. I couldn't imagine that. But hopefully, if he comes back and he's near 100%, 90%, we will be a top 5-7 unit because Kingsley's probably going to be good. He's looked good. We spent high draft capital. We traded up. We spent a whole 6th rounder to trade up 1 spot to get him. So he better be good. When we did that, I was like, man, this is a crazy trade value-wise. But and then Jawaan Taylor, I'm a fan of his. I'm definitely a fan of his. After they stopped targeting him for penalties, I mean, he kept Mahomes clean. If there was pressure, it was coming from the left side. So
yeah,
super happy.
Yeah, and like I said, I like it. I think this offensive line, they have a chance to literally like clear house and like Pro Bowl, and like hopefully we don't go to Pro Bowl, but Pro Bowl nods from our offensive line. Because my God, like I think Kingsley and I think Jawaan Taylor, if he's just not off sides, like he's gonna look really good on like he's gonna like have a lot of these stats where we look at where it's like best time to throw, and he had that last year.
Yeah.
He literally was number 1 in the league last year, but the only problem is he was the most penalized offensive lineman in the league.
That's a great point.
Offensive lineman in the league.
That's a great point. And he, we don't really look at run blocking stats, and he's not good at run blocking. And so as far as Pro Bowls and All Pro, if he keeps the penalties down, which could be a regression thing. I mean, penalties aren't the same every year. He could really get that nod.
Yeah, because we had 3 out of 5. Or maybe 4 out of 5 were named Pro Bowlers or All Pros. I know some were all Pro Bowlers and then some were, which didn't make very many sense. But I'm moving on to defense before we get out of here. Is now we're talking about the guys getting pressure, except besides blocking pressure. Some notable names. You got George Karlaftis, Mike Dana, Chris Jones, Derek Nottie, Felix Udike-Uzomah, Cam Thomas, who they just got from the Bucs, which I want. We'll get into that. And then who else we got? Turk Warden, McKill Herring. So they kept 9 defensive linemen. Do you think that those names and that's the right amount of guys to keep?
I don't know. I'm not a GM. I've never had to construct a lineup like that other than on Madden, but I normally let the CPU cut down to 53 for me. But, I mean, those guys sound like a bunch of guys, a bunch of just names. Other than Chris Jones, Karlaftis, Dana, and Pennell, my guy, Super Bowl 54
I'm sorry,
legend.
Mike Pennell too. Yep.
Oh yeah,
Mike Pennell. But what do you think about Mike Dana? I mean, he had a 9, almost 10 sack season.
Yeah.
Do you think he can get up to a hot start?
We signed him to a good deal. When I saw the figure, I think it was 3 for 24, was it, or 3 for 30?
I want to say something like that. 2, maybe 3.
I was like, that's a lot of money. And Mike Dana's great, but because he doesn't have the name recognition, I kind of put him in the back. I'm like, that's a lot of money for Mike Dana. But I'm glad we have him because with Omenahu out, it's just Karlaftis really that can consistently get pressure. So Dana and Karlaftis gonna have to do take a heavy load of work on, and then a lot of Chris Jones on the end, which obviously is like the most winning play in football. It seems like so.
Right.
Might as well.
Yeah, and I want to point that out too. As you said, Charles Manu, guy's going to make the roster. He's just going to be on.
Yeah.
He's going to be on reserves probably for the first 4 or 5 weeks. Same with the Hollywood Brown. If I didn't say his name, I'm pretty sure I did, but if I didn't say his name, he's on the roster too. And there are linebackers just to really go for the big name guys. You got Nick Bolton, Drew Twinkle, Leo Chanel, and you have another guy, Cam Jones, who he's kind of been a big preseason and training camp guy. But what do you think about our linebacking crew? Because my honest opinion, obviously they lost Willie Gay, is this is one of the better linebacking crews in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. They proved it last year. Now, that was with Gay, but we're expecting Chanel to just hop in and do what Gay did last year. And he definitely has the ability to. I was kind of sad that we cut Curtis Jacobs. He looked good in the preseason, and I was a fan of him coming out of college. I want us to get him. When I saw that he was still there in like the 6th round or even 5th round, I was like, I hope we get him. And we got him as an undrafted free agent. But we decided to release him. Probably won't get him on the practice squad. And of course, linebackers are like the least important position group really on the football field. And so the 3 solid guys we got is just fine.
Yeah, and I think Leo Chanel is really starting to come into his own, and I'm excited to see him this year. Now the big one, before we get into some of our guys that you could see coming back and making the practice squad, the cornerbacks, kept 6 cornerbacks. Trent McDuffie, Najee Johnson, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Christian Rollin, Wallace, and then Nick Jones. How do you feel? I mean, some of those guys, they're probably not going to see the field a whole lot, but we're going to have to rely on the guys like Najee Johnson, Jalen Watson, and Joshua Williams to kind of replace that Snead role. One of them, at least.
I'm very concerned with that group, honestly. I wanted us to get Gilmore. I said it in most podcasts that we did throughout the offseason. I said, I want Gilmore. We know what we'll get with Gilmore. He will not be a liability. He won't, because he just a few years ago, he was an all-pro first-team talent. After you say Trent McDuffie, everyone else is they've had their ups and downs.
That's something to prove.
They have something to prove. They had very inconsistent camps. They got beat in the preseason. They weren't given this responsibility last year. It was kind of divvied up between them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm mainly looking at, of course, Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson. But it concerns me. I hope they're good enough, but if not, I hope we don't hesitate to make a move during the season.
Yeah. And then lastly, or second to last, they have the safeties, Justin Reed, Brian Cook, and Jaden Hicks, and then Shamari Connor.
That's a good group. Yes.
Yeah, I like the safety group, especially if Cook comes back healthy. That's a really good safety group. And that was kind of a concern, I want to say, 2 years ago before they signed Reed. That was kind of a concern back there. After Eric Berry left, there just wasn't. I mean, you had Tyrann Mathieu, but outside of that, and he's just a little bit more of like the bandit. But after that, it was just you didn't have a lot of guys. Now this safety room is starting to fill out. And Jaden Hicks, a guy who was listed as at one point a late first rounder, early second rounder, who the Chiefs got in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I mean, he made plays all preseason. They had him playing a lot. Tackles on special teams, tackles, good coverage, everything. So I would not be surprised if he looks better right now than Connor and Cook did at this time of their career. Now, I believe we drafted Cook 2 years ago, Connor last year, and now Hicks this year. And we're really lined up to have that group locked down post Justin Reed. And that's beautiful because safeties are very important and they're very valuable and they play all over the place. Like there's guys that like to play in the box. There's guys that are good at slot corner, guys that are over the top. And we have all that. So I love that group.
Absolutely. And then you have your specialists, Harrison Butker, James Winchester, long snapper, and Matt Araiza. How do you feel about the punter, kicker? Not much to say about Winchester. I mean, he's been goated for the last 11 years on the Chiefs.
Goated.
So we know that he's got the perfect snaps. He's going to be shout out best college football team in the country where he went, Oklahoma. Shout out OU. So what do you think about Here, obviously, Harrison Butker's Harrison Butker, but my real question is Matt Arison. What do you feel about him? He had a couple
Hey,
bad punts preseason, but some of them were absolutely just missiles towards like the
hey,
5 yard line.
the potential for him is as good as any punter coming out of college. I mean, he was drafted as a punter, so that should tell you all you need to know.
Right.
Looking forward to. I mean, we just got rid of an All-Pro punter, but also Townsend in his 4 years really only played at that level like a year and a half. Last year he
Right.
wasn't as good as the year before. He was really bad as a rookie, and so losing Townsend is really this guy Araiza could be a little bit better than Townsend.
Absolutely. And like you said, I think he was drafted in the 5th or 6th round. So I have to fact me check on it. I want to say the 5th round as a punter. I mean, maybe a punter gets drafted every 5, 6, 7 years. You see like a kicker go in the 7th or a punter go in like the 7th late rounds because they're going to be sought after UDFAs. But I mean, the Chiefs getting this guy is just another reason where it's just like, oh my God, like we just keep getting guys that have that high ceiling that they could meet.
Yep.
Before we get out of here, the last thing we're going to kind of go over is any of the guys that did get cut. Who did you see where you're like, you know what, we cut this guy, but if there was any more roster room, if it was back to the 56 like a couple years ago, I would have this guy still on the roster. Who would you bring back that got cut? And even would you bring him back on the practice squad? That's a possibility.
Tony.
I
love Tony. Hey, he has proven that he does not know what's happening on a football field. But I love Tony. Man, you don't have to play him. You build him up, help his brain, feed him some film, and then keep him healthy, and then his ankle's gonna do the rest. You know what I'm saying? Like, that would be my guy. But I love Tony. I might have to get a Tony jersey just for that punt return. And his game against the Jags. Think about how hype we were when he came first game against the Jags and mossed a dude and scored a touchdown.
I just saw that video. That's what's funny. I just saw that video and I was like, holy crap. Like, we went from thinking, dude, this connection is going to be the next Tyreek Hill connection to now we have Chiefs fans being like, see you later. Don't let the door hit you when you walk out. So
you even make the roster over Sky Moore, bro. That's bottom of the barrel, bro. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I think what the part of the reason is he's like Andy Reid will take a guy who's a little less talented if they're a locker guy and they're willing to just be a locker guy. So I think that's what it's not saying Kadarius Toney may not be a locker guy, but I know he kind of had things going.
I doubt he's a locker guy, bro. Whatever a locker guy is, he's not. You saw his Instagram lives, bro.
That's what I said. Well, we did see his Instagram lives, so there's that. But is there a chance they bring him back in the practice squad?
There's no way he makes it to the practice squad, right?
Yeah.
Like someone first round talent, he had a game with 180 receiving yards against the Cowboys. Like was it against the Cowboys? When he was with the Giants. He did some crazy stuff. And it's like he has mad potential. So some teams that really have nothing to lose, like I don't know, the Titans. I don't know.
I can see that. Washington.
Washington. They might take a flyer on him. Like, we'll help you rebuild your career.
The Raiders.
Right now, you have no future unless you join us.
Yeah, I could definitely see him making the Raiders. I don't know why, and there would be like just absolute beef. I feel like
him joining the Raiders would be hilarious. I'm not gonna
lie. It would be a fantastic because I just feel like he just feels like a Raiders player, and there would be mad beef. So I would want to see that. Louis Zammit. Louis Rees-Zammit. I need to say his full name right. He got cut, but are we assuming he makes the practice squad?
I'm assuming so. I mean, he didn't really show anything that's like, oh, we need to grab him from the Chiefs.
Right.
Like, he'll probably make it back, and he's a free spot. We don't have to use up a spot on him.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't look great at football, which was kind of sad because I was thinking if you're one of the best rugby players, you should be able to break some tackles. You know what I'm saying? That's your whole sport, but I guess not.
Yeah, I think he's still learning football. And his only thing that I really saw glimpses was with special teams. You can't make an NFL roster unless you're, again, a kicker or a punter. But you can't really make it if you can't go out and do, even be a gadget guy on the field and just be like, I'm just returning kicks and punts, and I'm not going to really be a good running back or a good receiver. But I do think they keep him on the practice squad in case someone gets hurt or they just develop him. But yeah, that's what. And then obviously Chris Aldukin, I don't think anyone's going to go get him.
Oh no, he played badly last week, so he secured his spot on the three-peat Super Bowl champs.
Yeah, I think he'll be that third string guy on the practice squad. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. We are going to get out of here. The TBT podcast will be back later in the week as we always do. Guys, we're going to do a couple more live. Preview. Guys, we're getting closer and closer to the third season of TBT podcast and trying to three-peat. A fun fact for all you guys that watch TBT podcast. Every year I've had this podcast, we've won a damn Super Bowl.
Ooh, you need to keep it up.
First year I started this, the last 3 years, I should say. Not the first year we won versus the San Francisco 49ers. But hey, we're on a good roll at TBT podcast. We've had a lot of good things to.
You need to go start a Royals podcast, please. Please start a Royals podcast.
Yeah, guys, we made it to get that. We're going to get more into a sports podcast after the TBT season, so you guys have to look out for that as well. But we will see you guys next time on the TBT podcast.